You think you know how justice works. A crime happens, the police investigate, a trial drags on for months, maybe years, and somewhere down the line a verdict comes. Slow quiet behind courthouse doors. But that's not the story I'm about to tell you. No, this one unfolded in minutes right in the heart of a city square, not decided by 12 jurors in a box, but by 200,000 strangers watching through the screen of a phone, and by one woman who refused to back down. Her name was Caroline Myers. She wasn't a cop. She wasn't a politician. She wasn't even someone with a safety net. She was a reporter, the kind who pissed off all the right people. For 6 long months, she'd been chasing whispers about crooked cops in the Crestwood Police Department. What started as a boring little tip about fudged overtime hours had grown into a monster ledgers, audio files, emails, enough to bring down a whole network of officers who thought they were untouchable. She carried all of it on a silver USB drive tucked inside her pocket, and she knew one wrong step could mean never making it home. On that brisk fall afternoon, Caroline walked through Crestwood Plaza like she was any other commuter hurrying home. But her nerves told a different story. She kept clutching the lapel of her tan vest fingers, brushing that small drive like it was a live grenade. She was supposed to meet someone from the district attorney's office, one of the only people she trusted, but the plaza was wide open, full of strangers, and she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was already watching her. She was right. Across the fountain stood a man she knew from her files. Officer Brad Keller. Broad shoulders, thick neck, a face that seemed carved from stone and arrogance. He was the hammer for the corrupt circle inside the department, the guy they sent when fear was more effective than paperwork. His record was filthy complaints of excessive force intimidation, even rumors of blackmail. Every one of them buried, and now here he was smiling at her like a wolf who'd already tasted blood. Caroline's stomach dropped. The DA's office was just across the square, but 100 yards felt like 100 miles. She told herself not to run. Running is guilt, running is fear. But Keller moved with terrifying ease, shadowing her steps, pushing her toward the old courthouse colonnade where the crowd thinned and shadows stretched long. "Ms. Myers," he drawled, his voice smooth as sandpaper. "Fancy seeing you here. Beautiful day, huh?" "I'm late for a meeting," she snapped, forcing her voice to stay steady. "Oh, I'm sure you are," he said, falling in beside her. "But you got time for a quick chat, don't you? We're real interested in those little projects you've been working on." The way he said we made her skin crawl. Caroline kept walking, trying to sound calm. "My work's public record once it's published. You can read it then." Keller chuckled, short and ugly. "See, that's the thing. Some stories don't need to be published. Bad for morale makes the city look weak. Panic ain't good for anyone." By then, he had her against a stone pillar. The crowd around them, oblivious people scrolling phones, wrangling kids hurrying by. To everyone else, it looked like a cop talking to a civilian. But she felt his grip clamp down on her arm like iron. "You found something," he hissed, eyes cold and close. "I'm gonna need that toy my snitch gave you. Hand it over and you walk away. Don't and I'll take it. Don't and I'll—" Caroline's heart hammered. For the first time in her career, she wasn't sure she'd make it out. "Let go of me," she whispered. Keller's response was a sneer. He slammed her against the pillar, rattling her bones, and then his hands went to her pockets. She kicked, clawed, fought, but he was a bull. When his fingers brushed the USB drive, his whole face lit up with greed. There it is. That's when something inside her snapped. This wasn't just about her career anymore. It was about her source, about the victims, about the truth. With a desperate surge, she drove her knee up into his groin. He howled, loosening his grip for a split second, just enough for her to shove him back and stumble away. But Keller wasn't about to let his prize run. He lunged, caught her collar, and with pure rage slammed her again, this time his hands closing around her throat. The world narrowed instantly. Her airway cut off her vision, blurring gray. She clawed at his wrist nails, digging deep, but he was relentless. The irony was bitter, being murdered in broad daylight by a man sworn to protect. But Keller forgot one thing. This wasn't the Dark Ages. This was Crestwood in 2025, and every person had a camera in their pocket. At first, it was one college kid who lifted his phone, streaming the horror live. Then another, and another. Within seconds, dozens of little screens framed the scene like a constellation of judgment. Keller didn't notice, but the world did. The live stream spread like wildfire, first a few hundred viewers, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. People were commenting in real time, "He's killing her." "That's Officer Keller, call 911. Caroline's mind screamed that she was about to die. But at the very edge of her fading consciousness, she heard it, the wail of sirens. Not just one, but many screaming closer with every second. Keller's grip faltered as confusion cracked through his fury. He looked around for the first time and froze. Phones, dozens of them pointed right at him. A wall of faces no longer indifferent, but furious, every eye a jury. For once, his badge wasn't a shield. It was a spotlight. "What? What are you doing?" he stammered, his voice cracking. He wasn't talking to Caroline anymore. He was talking to them, the crowd, the cameras, the entire invisible internet roaring for justice. "The whole world is watching you, you son of a bitch," a man in a business suit growled, lowering his phone just long enough to glare. And then the squad cars screeched in. Officers poured out their faces, grim. Their chief's voice, no doubt, screaming in their earpieces, "Bring him in by the book on camera." Keller let go. Carolyn collapsed against the pillar, gasping for air, coughing so hard her throat felt shredded. Through her blurry vision, she saw the unimaginable two young officers approaching their colleague, not to back him up, but to cuff him. A sergeant named Davis gave the order, his voice like steel. "Brad, hands behind your back. Now." Keller blinked, stunned. What the hell is going on? She attacked me. This is all a mistake. But the evidence was already immortal. His hands on her throat, lived on 1,000 screens, mirrored forever. The excuses fell flat before they left his mouth. When the cuffs clicked shut around his wrist, the sound was final, like a door slamming on his entire career. They stripped his gun, his radio, and then his badge. The Velcro ripping off his chest echoed louder than the sirens. And just like that, he wasn't an officer anymore. He was just a criminal in a blue costume. Caroline pressed a shaking hand to her pocket. The drive was still there, untouched. She had won. The trial that followed moved faster than anyone expected. The district attorney's office couldn't stall even if they wanted to. The whole country was watching. Keller, stripped of his uniform and shoved into a cheap suit, looked smaller in court. The jury barely had to deliberate. The video was played on a big screen, the entire room watching as his hands closed around Caroline's throat. The verdict came down hard, guilty of assault, battery, attempted robbery, and misconduct. 10 years, no parole for 7. But the real earthquake was that USB drive. It blew the lid off Crestwood PD like dynamite. Officers who thought they'd retire with fat pensions were suddenly in orange jumpsuits. The police chief was forced out. A dozen others were indicted. The whole rotten structure collapsed. Carolyn kept reporting her articles, now front page across the nation. She became a reluctant symbol of what journalism could still be, a reminder that truth has teeth, and sometimes a camera can be sharper than any weapon. Months later, when spring warmed the plaza, she walked back to that colonnade. The stone pillar was just stone again. She touched it once and let her hand fall. She wasn't the frightened woman gasping for air anymore. She was the woman who survived and who lit the match that burned corruption out of her city. A young man passing with a stroller caught her eye, did a double take, and nodded with quiet respect. She nodded back, smiling faintly. Crestwood was healing, and so was she. They say justice is blind, holding scales slow and balanced. But that day proved something else. Sometimes justice has a million eyes, each one watching through a lens, refusing to look away. Sometimes justice is messy, immediate, born out of outrage, and the courage of people hitting record instead of walking on. And now I want to ask you, if you'd been there, phone in hand, would you have hit record or would you have turned away? Do you think technology is the greatest weapon against abuse of power? Or is it a double-edged sword we haven't learned to control? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this isn't just Caroline's story. It's a story about all of us, about whether we're willing to stand by or stand up.